Hi. My name is Mike. I'm going to talk to you about the invention of the wheel. Are there any engineers in here? Probably, yeah. So you can relate to this. If you look to nature, you are usually kind of humbled by helicopters, submarines, color screens, and cameras, and supercomputers, and all sorts of stuff. There is one invention, though, that is typically human, and that is the wheel. This is pretty cool, by the way. And so there are small ones and big ones. This one is 30 feet across and generates electricity for about 1 million people in China. So how does nature produce its energy without the wheel? To find out, we need a convenient source of tissue, Brady, an electron microscope, and a synchrotron. So let's shine the electron microscope at Brady's ear, for example. There we go. Those are little protrusions from cells in Brady's ear that allow him to hear me, and the rest of you too. You have about 50 million cells in your body. And so let's cut one open and look at it. So here's a muscle cell. In red over there is the nucleus, that's where all the DNA is kept. In green are the mitochondria that produce all the energy, and I'm going to get back to those in a minute. And then up there you can see the muscle fibers. And the cell is basically like a big city. And the question is, how do the muscles actually get their energy? You all know you have to eat food and breathe oxygen. You exhale carbon dioxide. So it's as if you're actually burning your food, and you all know this. But there are no fires inside your body. So how does it work? Well, the body has enzymes, and they basically break down the sugar or the food step by step, and they harness the energy, and they store it in a molecule called ATP. This is pretty cool. It acts like a battery. You can charge it and uncharge it somewhere else. You can produce the energy here and then use the energy somewhere else. You actually go through 60 kilograms of this every day. You reuse it. You only have 100 grams or so in your body, but that's the turnover. So what are enzymes? Enzymes are proteins, and I'm sure you all know proteins. You eat them for breakfast. They're basically long molecules made from small molecules called amino acids. And they're basically strung together in a linear way, and then they scrunch up and fold up into a very specific shape, which is determined by their sequence, like this. And this thing has 500 atoms or something. They're all in a very specific place, and you can't see what's going on. So if I redraw it like this, you can see it sort of forms this really beautiful kind of shape. But this is a very small protein. Most proteins are more like this, monsters. And the structure of this thing is entirely determined by the sequence of the amino acids that are strung together, thousands of these. How does the cell know how to do this? Well, it just reads it off the DNA. That's what DNA does, in fact. It simply encodes the sequence of amino acids and tells the body how to build its 50,000 different kinds of proteins. Okay, so let's get back to the mitochondria. I want to tell you about one specific protein. The mitochondria are these little bags where the food is actually burned. And they exist in every cell, and when the sugar is broken down step by step, at each step, what it does, it pumps protons into a space in between these two membranes that surround these, inside these green spaces, basically. And when the protons flow out again, it's like pumping water uphill. They flow out through this particular enzyme, and this is actually a picture. This thing is only, it's very small. So this is a picture, a high-resolution picture of it. You can see the protons come out, they flow through the bottom of it, and they somehow magically power the production of ATP, which then powers everything else in your body. So some Japanese researchers did this really cool experiment. They stuck a fiber, which is much longer than this picture, to this molecule, and they drove this thing backwards by feeding it ATP. And they looked down a microscope, and oh, you can barely see this. Can you see something rotating? Sweet. That's what they saw. It's pretty cool. It rotates. And they figured out that this is actually a tiny, tiny turbine. Hopefully, can we advance the slide? Perfect. So this is a model of what we think this looks like. The protons flow out through the membrane, through that bottom bit, and they make that inside thing rotate. And that mechanically transfers the energy to the production of ATP, which happens at the top of a molecule. Every single bit of energy that you use is produced by this thing. If you look at your hand right now, there are trillions of these rotating around in your body. And so I'm afraid to say we're about 3 billion years late for the invention of the wheel. I'm sorry. Thanks.